Hey, Shopping Allies Math and History, and we're gonna investigate graphing linear inequalities, and I also like to call it a graph of black and white, because what we're gonna be learning about is something that's very, very strange, but it does make sense once you understand it. So, when you ever learned about graphing linear equations, this is an example of a linear equation. This is called slope-intercept form. While your x is your input, your y is your output, your 3 or negative 3 is going to be your slope, and your 4 is going to be your y-intercept, or starting point. But what happens if you come across an equation like x is going to be greater or equal to 10? Well, what does that mean? The really strange equation up here is saying that anything that's inserted in for x must be at least 10 or more. So x would be 10 or more. If you ever wanted to graph that onto a graph, then this is what it would look like. Number values that are always at least 10 or more. It's like a video game. So, the last clip you just saw was technically a straight number line, but having 10 right here and a filled-in dot, because that represents that this is including that 10, or more. So, when you see an inequality, an inequality is an equation that will never ever or rarely use the equal sign. So when you see the signs like greater than, less than, greater or equal to, or greater or less than or equal to, then those equations are usually called inequalities. But what happens is instead of having y equals 3, negative 3x plus 4, what happens if you ever come across y is greater or equal to negative 3x plus 4? Wait, huh? So, we know at this point that this does look like slope-intercept form, but it will make a linear line, but it will also dominate almost the entire graph, because when we take a look at this one, we are just looking at a simple straight line. But whatever happens is if you have pretty much almost the same equation, but your operator changes. Instead of a straight line, this will make a line that will make a shaded area. So not only it's going to make a straight line, but it will also cover all the answers that it will have that's true, and it will also dominate pretty much a lot of the graph. The reason why there's a lot of answers for this equation is because in the normal equation, when you insert a number in for x, you always get a number in for y. Like if I put 2, we have negative 6 with that and that, plus 4. Y is going to equal negative 2. That's how we learned it in the past years. But what happens if we try and do it in for this? Well, let's wait and see. We have 2 in for x, so that will still become a negative 6 plus 4, and that is going to equal negative 2. But wait. Negative 2 is definitely greater or equal to negative 2. So that does work. Whatever you put in for x, puts in for y. But these kind of equations are not that rigid in following that rule. Since that whatever you want for y has to be greater than what you put in for x, then you can get very, very creative and experiment however you want. Like, let's get extreme. We have -3, let's insert 4 in for -3x. So, -3 times 4 is going to be -12. Plus 4 is going to be -8. But since we got -8 as the right side of the equation, this equation's not going to be very rigid. What we get for y has to be greater or equal to -8. So since we want to go extreme and have a lot of fun with this, we're going to go 10,000 because that is definitely greater or equal to -8. That is just an introduction to this, and this right here is just one answer. But wait, there are more answers. But how do we get to every answer possible without having to do this forever and take the entire time of our life? Well, the reason why the inequality helps is anything inside that shaded region is also an answer. Here's an example when we put this into a graph. Wow! So, when you saw that on the graph, not only it made a linear line, but also it's gonna help with getting all the answers that make this equation true. But it has to be in the shaded line. So just drawing a territory on a graph is gonna help you find all the answers that makes this equation true. If you ever play like Dynasty Warriors or Clash Royale or Clash of Clans, then it kind of seems like there's this giant empire trying to dominate the entire map or the entire video game world. So, when you have inequalities, they will have not just an ordinary line, but a border and a territory of mathematics in a single graph. That's why I like to call it a graph of black and white. I hope this video has helped you get an introduction of graphing linear inequalities. In the next video, we'll talk a lot about different types of inequalities and how it affects the graph and how it affects what it looks like. I hope this video has helped you. Thank you for watching Taoping Airlines Math Industry. Like and subscribe.